Hi everybody, afternoon. It's Ade here from Skidmore Second Hand Tyres. After the last video I put out, part 4 of the restoration, there were some comments about the wedges and clamps that I'd made for holding the side rails on. So I thought I'd do a little VR about the clamps and actually what I use for clamping up bigger stuff as well. When I made the door for the workshop, and not so much the other stuff, but certainly the door, because that was gluing together 3 cross rails onto 2 side rails, I used a form of sash clamp which I make out of some offcuts of wood I've got knocking around and some wedges. One of the people who passed a comment was Paul from Brothers of Bushcraft, or Brothers in Bushcraft. He's changed his name recently to that, and basically it's a long strip with a couple of wood blocks and some wedges. These wedges are cut from a plank of wood that was, I think, 110, something like that, wide, and they're 150mm long, 25 at that end and 18 at that end. And so I cut them marked it out with a pencil and a ruler, just simple, and then cut them out with a jigsaw and then just planed them so you got a nice flat surface on the taper, and of course on the others on the inside of the plank on the back as well. And they're only 20mm thick, and they, with a studious use of a little hammer, provide a lot of clamping pressure. So I'll show you the setup I've got here on the bench and what I do to clamp bits of wood. Right, one end of the planks of wood, I've got 2 stop ends which are just screwed onto the ends at right angles across the boards, and they you can make the boards actually, well, planks as long as you like, depending on the size of work you got. I've got 2 this size because I took apart an old bed frame that Jimmy had when he came back home from one of his stays away, and so rather than cut them down, I've just left them as long as they are, so that they'll match with any size of work that I'm going to be gluing or clamping together to glue. But you can make them shorter, or if you've got shorter bits and that's all you need, then obviously use that. And then in the middle here there's a couple of more blocks and the wedges and some screws, and all you do is screw them on at a slight angle to match the taper of the wedge, and so there's room for the wedge to go into the work. So if I set the camera up again now, I'll show you what I do with that. So just for demonstration purposes, I've got an offcut of ply here, which put onto the boards, get it up tight against the stops, and then if you place the wedge so that the thin end has got some room to get in, and then you've still got plenty of room for it to knock in, and so I'm doing this the old fashioned way with a screwdriver. Go. It's the same with the other side. Do the same thing. If you mark with an arrow on the block the direction that the wedge is meant to go in, mark on the top of the wedge across so that you know that's the tapered side, so the flat side goes against the work. and just knock them in. They hold the work tight, pinch it up nicely so that it can be glued together. And like I say, you can do it with anything really, any size bit of wood, and the blocks and the wedges. And it's a simple and cheap and lightweight way of clamping wood together to glue it up, which if you went out and bought the sash clamps for, they cost a few quid each, and it's just a simple, cheap, lightweight method of clamping wood, so that you don't have to buy all those bits and have them hanging around for ages going rusty between uses. So that's a nice quick little tip for you. Hope you find it useful, and keep watching the old boat restoration. I hope you're still enjoying that, and I'll see you soon. Cheerio.